The only thing you can't do is not do anything. And it wasn't even a question of like, is it a good idea? Is it strategic? It was like, cool, go.
But there was a moment where all of a sudden that decided to start crashing down.
Mid 2024, we started to experience some resistance to growth. And it was kind of the first time that we'd experienced that. It all kind of came to a head actually the week after Thanksgiving. I had a mentor text me, but it felt like a divine moment of God put it on his heart to text me in that moment. I remember walking into that Starbucks and going, I need to just be brutally, painfully honest about where my head and my heart are right now with this guy because I need help. And he said to me in that moment, he goes, this is going to break your heart for me to say, but you have to do a round of layoffs immediately.
Welcome to the Cincinnati Business Podcast, where we give you practical tips and tricks to grow yourself and your business. And brought to you by the Cincinnati Podcast Studio. Kurt, I'm so glad you're here, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah. I want to dive right into it.
Yeah,
so
let's do it.
You describe your life as a series of reinventions. So if you could pick one moment in your life, like that you are all of a sudden realizing I have to change.
Wow.
What was it and what were you feeling in that moment?
Whew. Man, you're coming out swinging.
Sorry.
I like it. We're not messing around. I would say, the thing that came to mind first, and when I say my life is a series of reinventions, I think some of the most entrepreneurial people that I admire can take what they've learned in different seasons and translate it into a next chapter really well. Mm-hmm. And so when I say reinventions, like that's what I mean is kind of, we go through these seasons in maybe it's professional career, in our personal lives. And the people that I admire the most have figured out how to kind of unwind those seasons and learn from them in a way that propels them forward. Right. And I've always really, really admired that. I've always been interested in like so many different things that I think by nature of that, I'm going to end up with like a collection of careers that I end up pursuing. But I want to be able to take whatever I learned from that last season and bring it with me into the next season, right? And so the big moment that comes to mind for me is sitting in Crossroads Church here in Cincinnati, and it was just before we were about to start the first Brave Journey, and Chuck Mingo's on stage and he's delivering a sermon on prayer. And what Chuck was talking about is that, or what I remember from Chuck's sermon is that we oftentimes think of prayer and we think about solitude. And we think about quiet. And while solitude and quiet and spending time with the Lord in that way is really important, and that is a time to set aside for prayer, that sometimes God wants us praying while we're moving, while we're in motion, while we're taking action, right? And Chuck referenced a verse in Isaiah. It's Isaiah 30:21. And it says, whether I turn to the left or to the right, I will hear a voice behind me saying, this is the way, walk in it. And at the time, I was still at Northwestern Mutual as a financial advisor. I had spent about 5 years there. I'm sure we'll get into some of that story. But I was kind of like entertaining this idea of leaving Northwestern and starting a marketing consultancy. Didn't really know what exactly that would look like, but I was doing some consulting and coaching on the side. And I just had this kind of itch to go do something a little bit different. Wasn't sure if the wealth management track for the next 30 years was where I should be. And I heard that verse from Chuck, and I felt God saying to me in the moment, hey, Kurt, you could stay in the financial services world, you could stay in the wealth management world, and you can have a beautiful career, and everything that you're excited about there, it can be true, and I will bless that, and I'll be in that with you. Or you can go build your own thing. You can run after this marketing consultancy, and there's some cool opportunities there. And if you go that direction, I will be in that with you, and I will bless that. The only thing you can't do is not do anything. And I felt some conviction in that moment of God saying, like, there's not a bad choice here. There's not a wrong choice here. The only bad thing you could do is sit in this any longer than you already have. And I think there come moments, at least in my experience, there have been kind of defining moments like that where God has said, like, hey, enough is enough, dude, take some action and keep moving forward. And those are those moments of reinvention for me.
So you're sitting in this service, God speaks to you and you say, 30-21. What did your family say?
Yeah.
What did your wife say when like you say, you know what? I want to quit something that's comfortable and pursue something different.
Well, I wasn't married at the time.
You weren't married at the time. Okay.
I was dating my now wife, Casey, maybe engaged to Casey. We were definitely engaged once I finally kind of made the decision to leave Northwestern. I mean, Casey comes from a family of entrepreneurs. Her whole family is entrepreneurial. She's entrepreneurial herself. And God knew what he was doing when he teamed me up with Casey. Like my wife is very even, very steady. I mean, I know we're going to get into some of the story of the last couple of years. She's been my rock, man. Not a whole lot phases Casey. And so I do remember kind of a defining moment right on the heels of that one, sitting in Casey's apartment with her and kind of talking through like kind of in that moment of like, I think I'm going to do that. Like, I think I kind of have to do this. And it wasn't even a question of like, is it a good idea? Is it strategic? It was like, cool, go, And I think we all need people like that in our lives that are just that non-anxious presence, that person that's willing to say like, cool, you're convicted about it. You need to go do it. You need to lean into that.
So I want to skip ahead in the story a little bit.
Yeah.
There was another big moment of reinvention that has kind of shaped you into the guy you are now.
Yeah.
Of you build 30-21, this awesome agency. And I want to talk about building it because I think it's going to be really interesting for people to listen to. But there was a moment where all of a sudden that decided to start crashing down.
Yeah.
Help me understand your world in that moment. Where was 30-21? Yeah. Where were you? What were you feeling? What happened?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see, about midway through 2024, and I'll try to kind of focus in on that moment specifically, and then we can kind of expand the story out. But like mid 2024, we started to experience some resistance to growth, and it was kind of the first time that we'd experienced that. Like the agency had been green and growing for a while, but I was starting to battle through some burnout. And when I say starting to battle through some burnout, I would say burnout I was starting to experience some of the symptoms of burnout. Burnout had been there for a little bit longer than I knew at the time, but I was starting to really experience some of those symptoms. And it was professional burnt out from 7-8 years of building and growing a business and battling through really building something from scratch for the first time. And it was personal burnout. I had some things going on in my immediate family with my folks that were just really challenging, like once in a lifetime type of challenges. And it all kind of came to a head actually the week after Thanksgiving, 2024. I had a mentor text me and say, hey, I have some time to grab coffee if you want to catch up. And this is a man that's been in my life for a really long time and knew kind of some of what was going on, especially in my personal life, and had just been in my corner through all of that. And so not uncommon that he would text me, but it felt like a divine moment of God put it on his heart to text me in that moment. And I said, yep, whatever you got, I'll take it. And so we met at 6 a.m. at Starbucks in Rookwood. And I remember walking into that Starbucks and going, I need to just be brutally, painfully honest about where my head and my heart are right now with this guy, because I need help. And so I told him, I got some updates for you, personal and professional. Which one you want first? And he's like, well, start with the personal. I told him what was going on with my family and kind of gave him the updates there. And I said, professionally, here's what's going on. And I kind of laid out for him what the situation in the business was. And the situation was that we had a really healthy pipeline of opportunities that just seemed to kept getting pushed off further and further, that we just couldn't seem to get anything across the finish line. And again, kind of the first time that had happened to us. I had extended our line of credit, maxed out our line of credit as much as I possibly could, and was kind of hanging on by a thread. I had us out over a barrel financially. And he said to me in that moment, he goes, "This is going to break your heart for me to say, but you have to do a round of layoffs immediately." I'm not a big public crier, but I started sobbing in the middle of that Starbucks. Just the weight of those two realities, what had been going on in my family's life, and then what was now true in the business, just came crashing down on me all at once. And, leadership is such a unique opportunity and privilege, to be in a position where you can speak and breathe life into someone and create opportunities for them and coach and help kind of as a steward, help shape and mold them into more of who they were designed to be, is such a unique privilege. It's also a significant burden. Mm-hmm. And that burden of leadership, leading my family and leading the business, leading our team, leading our clients, I just felt the weight of that so heavy in that moment. Mm-hmm. And so I brought it back to our leadership team and I said, here's where we're at. I'm terrified. I don't know what to do, but all I know is I can't keep carrying this. And so that next week we laid off about half of our team.
How big was your team at that point?
About 15, 16 of us full time in the business. So we laid off about half the team. And I mean, this, like our team is high culture, very tight knit. I'm a hands-on leader. So like, I get my hands dirty relationally with like what's going on in their world. I want to see people win, whether it's with us or elsewhere. And so that was a really painful moment, but for two reasons. It caught me off guard. I was not expecting that mentor to say, you got to do a round of layoffs. I kind of knew that was probably the wise thing to do, but I was fighting it, doing everything I could to try to avoid that becoming our reality. And second, it caught our team off guard. And as a leader, you never want to catch people off guard. We had told our team that things weren't going to plan and that we were struggling through. But because I had never really experienced needing to do a round of layoffs or pulling things back, I didn't see the writing on the wall as clearly as, someone like my mentor with experience could. And I just figured like, he'll make a way. Like we'll figure our way through this because we've dodged so many bullets like this before. And so it caught me off guard. And unfortunately that meant it caught our team off guard.
So there's this trap that most people in general fall into of combining their worth with the work that they do. Mm-hmm. What were some of the accusatory statements you were hearing in your head about who you were in that moment?
Oh man. That I'm hearing in my head then or that I'm still hearing in my head now?
It's fine for both.
I think we're telling this story. It's a recent story, right? Mm-hmm. This is just into 2024. We ended up, unwinding the agency in 2025. But man, this is still all head and heart stuff that I'm still working my way through. Right. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm sure it will be used against me, for the rest of my career. Right. These challenging moments. So I would say, everything from, it was all on me. It was all my fault. I should have seen it coming. I still have woulda, shoulda, coulda moments, and I have to like temper how much I lean into what are some of the lessons that we need to learn from those experiences, and when does it become like not healthy to like try to like play chess backwards, right? Of like, what pieces could we moved around? How could we have survived? Could we have made it out? Those kind of things. But I would say, I have a friend who's a coach and speaker, Jordan Montgomery, and he walked through a similar season in his career where he was actually terminated. His employment was terminated. And what that person in authority said to him is, when you're casual, you create casualties. And that statement, when I heard Jordan share that recently, that statement really resonated with me. There were just some things in the business because we had grown to a certain point and because they weren't my strong suit, that we had just run a little bit too casual. And as we hit a certain point in the business, we should have been more disciplined. I should have been more disciplined and more intentional about them, but we just kept them pretty casual. And unfortunately, that led to some casualties in the business. And I think the hardest thing that I had to process through is there was relational damage that had happened. And man, relationships are everything to me, building into our team was part of what kept me going through burnout, right? And seeing those relationships fractured because of the casual nature with which I had been running certain parts of the business it is an unfortunate way to learn that lesson, but a powerful way to learn that lesson.
So you said you like to get your hands dirty in relationships with your team.
Yeah.
And then a week later, from that fateful conversation, you're sitting across the table from them and telling them they have to leave.
Yeah.
What was that like for you to, how did you handle that in a way? Because here's the interesting thing that I found.
Yeah.
I was watching this unfold from the outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing that I saw was people speaking only good things about 3021. When it is so easy to see all of these things happen and want to complain and want to say, oh, well, Kurt just didn't do blah, blah, blah. I never heard a word of that.
Wow.
So how did you approach those layoffs in a way that honored the person across the table from you and hopefully helped them to move forward in a good way?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for sharing that. And I would say that speaks as much, if not more, to the character of the people that we recruited to our team as it does about anything that I did or didn't do.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, because everybody on our team probably we had some incredible people on our team.
Yeah.
Just high character, high integrity, some of the kindest, most generous, hardworking people that you'll ever meet. Right. Mm-hmm. I would say, if we did one thing right in that business, it's we recruited the person, right? Way more than the skill. We recruited the person way more than the skill. Yeah. And we just had great folks on the team. So I would say that says a lot more about them than it does about me. I would say my style of leadership, I'm really comfortable with messy, and I'm comfortable with real and raw. That's why I'm sitting here doing this with you. And so in that moment, my heart in it was to communicate to them hey, this is catching you off guard and it shouldn't. And that's on me. And it's on me because it's catching me off guard. Mm-hmm. Not to make that an excuse, but I want to be real with you that this is not something that I saw coming. It's my fault that we didn't see it coming, but it's not something that I saw coming. And so here's the reality of the situation. And I think, we were short and sweet because don't nobody want to camp out in that moment. Right. Mm-hmm. But we also communicated that as a leadership team, back to recruited some incredible people. My entire leadership team wanted to sit across the table from those folks. Mm-hmm. So it was not just me sitting there one-on-one. I did, the bulk of the communication, but some high character folks on our leadership team to say that this is a we thing, not a you thing. And I'll be forever grateful to them for that.
One of the biggest problems that you face when you're trying to create a podcast is the lack of time to make your podcast great. It takes hours of your time to plan, record, and edit, and then eventually post your content. Here at the Cincinnati Podcast Studio, we help brands and entrepreneurs build their own podcast with services from planning to posting. We've got you covered. So come to our studio located in downtown Cincinnati and let us help you plan your show, coach you on how to be a great host, record, edit, and post your show. If you're interested in starting your own show, check us out at CincinnatiPodcastStudio.com. Was there any intentionality about how you set up the whole team in the end? Because you had to let the whole team go over the course of about a year-ish?
6 months or so.
Months?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
did you have a process? Did you have a mental model for what you were doing to try and help them succeed in what was next for them?
Yeah. I mean, one thing I did that I didn't realize was maybe like from the outside perspective, like a little bit wild, but at the moment, but it was really out of a heart for just like, I want to help these people land on their feet as much as I could. So when we did that first round of layoffs, I posted about it pretty publicly. I shared on LinkedIn, where I spend a lot of, if I spend time on social media, that's where I hang out. I have a great, community and great connections there. And so because of that, I wanted to use that platform to help these people land on their feet professionally as best I could. And so I reached out to them and I said, hey, I'm going to post about you on LinkedIn. Are you comfortable if I tag you? So I wanted to make sure I got their permission up front. And most everybody said, yeah, that'd be great. And I just kind of laid it out. Like, unfortunately, we had to let some people go, not because of anything that they did, but because the business is in a tough spot. Mm-hmm. And so I want to shed some light on these rock stars. You better go scoop them up while they're still available, right? And so that was one thing I did that, in hindsight, I recognize is like, that's kind of risky, because at the time, I wasn't sure if we were going to totally wind things down, or if we were going to kind of pick ourselves up by our bootstraps and keep going, if we were going to run lean for a little while. Like, I was still kind of in that decision-making process of like, okay, what do we do next as an organization? But to me, the first priority is taking care of our team and stewarding those relationships as best as I possibly could. Mm. And so it was a no-brainer to me to say, let me use some of this influence and relational equity maybe that I have with other folks around town, and create an opportunity to put a spotlight on some of these amazing people. Mm-hmm. And thankfully I had more than several. I had dozens of people reach out to me and ask about folks on our team. And there's one company in particular here in Cincinnati that scooped up like 4 of them yes. Pretty quickly. And I'm so grateful. So grateful. And then beyond that, it was just to the extent that, there were some fractured relationships that we're still in the process of working to heal those relationships and restore those relationships. For the most part, people understood and knew my heart well enough that like, this wasn't intentional or malicious, right? Mm-hmm. I'm hurting just as bad as everybody else is to navigate this. But, I also tried to just be in their corner. To just be a sounding board for like, hey, whatever you think you're going to do next, I'm here to help. I'll make introductions. I'll open doors. I'll listen. I'll, give feedback. Send me your resume. Like I'll try to help shape it up. Like just try to be helpful in any way that I could. Yeah.
Okay. Now I want to wind back the clock a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to go backwards, and then I want to talk about how your life has changed after 30-21.
Yeah. Okay.
But Chuck was talking about Isaiah 30:21.
Yeah.
You talked to your girlfriend, maybe then fiance, saying, I want to do something.
Yeah.
Was what 30:21 was that the initial idea? Was that like...
Yeah, I mean, initially, I didn't even know what a marketing agency was at that point, right? Yeah. Like I'm deep into the wealth management world. What I had been doing was, let's rewind the clock. I spent, I won't take you all the way back, but when I was 12 or 13 years old, I went down on my first mission trip to Monterrey, Mexico, and with Back to Back Ministries, headquartered here in Cincinnati. And our family just fell in love with that organization. We fell in love with the kids down there. We fell in love with the staff. We became just so dedicated to being a part of that mission. God was doing incredible thing in our family, incredible things in our hearts through that work. And so we fell in love. So my dad made it his mission to go to Monterey 50 times before he turned 50.
Whoa.
So yeah, you talk about, maybe I get a little bit of my all in,
no kidding,
characteristic from my dad. So 50 times before he turned 50, and I got to go on a bunch of those trips. I bet I went to Monterey probably 30 times through middle school and high school.
Wow.
And so I get to be, 16 years old. I start interning with Back-to-Back. I ended up interning every summer through high school and college. And I thought for a long time I was just going to go on staff with Back-to-Back. I was going to go into full-time vocational ministry. And I just felt God kind of pulling me in a different direction. I wasn't real sure what I was going to do next, but my dad had been in the wealth management field his entire career. And so I kind of like fell into that world, and I realized that world is, most of that world is about building relationships and being a great listener and building trust, and then helping people make wise decisions with their wealth. And once I realized that, I was like, this would be an incredible place to start my career, maybe build my career long term.
Yeah.
And so
and you landed at Northwestern.
At Northwestern Mutual. Yeah.
Which every person I meet there is incredible.
Awesome folks.
I am so impressed by them. Like anytime anyone talks like, I want to do like financial services, or I'm like, here's where you go. They're the best.
It's an incredible place to start your career for so many reasons. Incredible people, incredible culture. They have some of the best sales training on the planet. And so I got equipped with incredible sales training. But what I realized is like two things. One, you start out there and it's eat what you kill. You get basically like a signing bonus for completing your training program. And then you're 100% commission, no salary whatsoever. And what I realized is like, I have my dad in the business for, at that point, 20 years, incredible sounding board, a ton of great wisdom of what it takes to be successful in that world. But that also means that I have no natural market to call on, right? Like friends, family, all of that, like he'd already called on them, been there, done that. So I got to try to figure out as a 22-year-old financial advisor, which that's the second thing I realized is that 22-year-olds don't make great financial advisors, right? I had to figure out as a 22-year-old financial advisor, like how do I get this thing off the ground? And so I had turned in a lot of ways to LinkedIn to go out and build new relationships. And the one thing I knew how to do, you think about like 16-year-old interning for Back-to-Back. I'm down in Monterey where we do short-term mission trips. So 60 or 70 Americans come down every single week, and I'm leading them on work projects, or we're going to hang out with kids at a children's home or whatever the case may be. But in a lot of times, like I'm leading them, or I'm part of that leadership team as a 16-year-old, right? And so you want to talk about like figuring out how to build trust quickly with a group of people. Like that was fertile training ground to figure out how to like be empathetic, be a great listener, and build rapport and trust quickly. And so I realized at 22, like, man, if there's anything that makes me unique, it's that I can build trust really quickly. And so that's what I did is I used LinkedIn to open a door. And a lot of times I would say like, hey, I recognize I'm a 22-year-old financial advisor, and 22-year-olds don't make great financial advisors, but I'd love to just meet you and hear your story and make the introduction. And then I would just show up and be myself and try as best I can to build a relationship and open a door to say, hey, let me introduce you to someone in our office, introduce you to an advisor in our office, or who else do you know in Cincinnati that I should know? And so because I had used LinkedIn quite a bit to build my practice, anytime you're a young advisor that gets off to a fast start inside a system like that, they want to go put you in front of other young advisors that they hope get off to a fast start, right? And so I was getting to do a little bit of like speaking and coaching, and towards the tail end of my time there had turned that into some like side hustle projects of consulting, and realized like, man, I'm having a lot more fun kind of figuring out how to build a product there than I am doing this actual like financial planning and advising. And so as I started to tug on that thread a little bit more, that's when I'm sitting in that service at Crossroads. And I felt God saying like, go do it. Right. And the it for me wasn't necessarily marketing consulting. I did fall in love with copywriting, and I fell in love with storytelling, and I fell even deeper in love with communication. But like the it for me was go build a business. You know, in the financial advising world at Northwestern Mutual, it's kind of like entrepreneurship with training wheels. Like You have a ton of autonomy, but you got a playbook that you're running. You got, a ton of other advisors around you to kind of have community around what you're going to do. It's a little bit different than a traditional sales role, but in a lot of respects, it's a sales role early on. I wasn't really building a business from scratch. And I wanted to learn what it takes to build a business from scratch, to go like coffee shop with a laptop and figure out what the product was and go build it. And so that's what I left to go do.
So I'm assuming the name, it makes sense. It was based off from Isaiah 30:20.
Well, what's wild is that wasn't the first name of the business.
What was the first name?
We rebranded the business a couple years later and kind of uncovered that story. The first name, beautiful name, Scaled Up Marketing.
I love it.
It's still my LLC.
I love it. I love it.
The premise behind it is still one that I deeply believe in. The name, not so much, but the premise behind it was like, how do I had learned from Northwestern Mutual how to build great relationships, how to build trust. And the premise was we can use digital tools to do that same kind of relationship building work, but in a much more scalable fashion. Absolutely. So how do you scale what you naturally do to build relationships?
That's great. Yeah. So the big thing I really want to focus on, it's amazing that I think you reported at the end of 2023, which is a year before this craziness happened, that you had hit 7 figures as a business, which is huge. That's no small feat.
Yeah.
But a lot of what I've heard you say about 3021 is that it's due to the awesome people you hired.
Yeah.
So how the heck did you choose these awesome people? How did that happen? What was your thought process when you were hiring? Because so many people get hiring wrong.
Yeah.
And I want to understand what you did.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, I got some advice early on from a mentor when I was about to hire my first employee back at Northwestern Mutual. And that advice was to hire the attitude, test the aptitude, and train the skill. Hire the attitude, test the aptitude, and train the skill. And there's one piece of that I would slightly alter today. That was, I think, some of lessons learned in the trenches, but the piece of that I love is hire the attitude first. We ended up recruiting a ton of people that one of our core values was I'm in if you're in. And we ended up recruiting a ton of people that just rallied around that just caught that idea, caught that notion of we're going to lock arms and go after building something together, and just ran after it. It takes a unique person to go out and want to build something. It takes an equally as unique person to say, yeah, I'll come work for you. This not established whatsoever business, young leader, trying to, still figure a lot of things out. Mm-hmm. And we recruited a lot of unique people that were willing to just lean in and say, yeah, I'm in. What do we need to go do? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of just really high character people that were in that. Then testing the aptitude came down to, you can use some personality tools to vet that, but it really came down to actually spending time with them in the interview process. Yeah. One of the hardest things for me as we started to scale the business was needing to remove myself from certain parts of the recruiting and vetting process, because man, one of the things I loved doing was spending time with people in that interview process. Mm-hmm. There's a quote about leadership that I love from John Maxwell. He says, great leaders help people see more and see before. And I love that concept of great leaders help kind of hold the mirror up and help other people see more of who they were created to be and see it before they would have otherwise seen it themselves. And that was what drove me as a leader. And so even in that interview process with people that we didn't end out hiring, I loved the opportunity to come back and say, hey, we're going to go in a different direction, but here's some things I noticed about you in this process that I don't know if you know about yourself.
I love that. Okay, I may be a little bit mean here. This still feels slightly nebulous to me. In a way that I'm trying to understand, sometimes I'm a details person. And so part of me is like, but how though? If you're getting like a bajillion resumes, how do you spend intentional time with all these people to actually recognize if they're a culture fit?
Yeah.
Like obviously that was part of the reason you had to start to step away from that process.
Yeah.
But early on, like what was that? Like, how did you do that? Did you do a lot of hiring through referral early on or?
Mostly referral.
Okay.
Yeah. It was mostly out of my warm market, or then eventually like from our team themselves. Like, one recruiting hack we used to joke about all the time is we hired former young lifers. Like half our team were former young lifers. And I think like it's funny to think about, but like you think about my story, a lot of where I learned to grow and develop was in the mission field, in ministry. You talk about like being discipled. Like that's a concept that is familiar to those of us that maybe grew up in the church, grew up in ministry. But like in the secular world, it's like having a mentor and like leaning into that relationship. Not everybody's exposed to that as early as you are if you came up through the church or through ministry. And so little things like that around personal responsibility, like young lifers, if you led Young Life, you said yes to a lot of responsibility, a lot of leadership development was built into those folks at a really early age. And so they were coming to us already having like experience running a program on time, showing up to things and taking responsibility for things, caring for other people and stewarding those relationships well, and wanted to be a part of something that was more than just like clock in, clock out, right? So that's a lot of what I would look for is like, I was pretty blunt in the interview process of like, this is not clock in, clock out. We try to be respectful of, people's commitments outside of work. I want you to have, hard boundaries on your work. And yet like, I'm going to put a job description in front of you that might change 3 weeks from now because we're evolving and growing as a company. And so you got to be ready for that. And I would just kind of like be really honest and real about what the role was, what the culture was and what it wasn't, and try to get a feel for like, is that going to scare you away? Is that going to intimidate you? Or is that something that's actually going to make you lean in even further?
That's great. That helps a lot because I think I adopted this back when I was working at Crossroads. Yeah. Like when I was building a team of volunteers, one of the biggest things that I tried to do was first I'd show them all the really cool stuff we got to do. Yeah. And then the second step I tried to do was I tried to scare them away. Yeah. Like I said, okay, now you really don't want to work with me. You don't want to serve in this role anymore. Yeah. And it sounds like you were kind of doing a similar thing of like, hey, here's the reality of how crazy what we do is. Yeah. Like, are you down for that reality?
Well, and back to that John Maxwell quote, like the other thing I would try to do and still do to this day, whether I'm like mentoring a young person or I'm in a coaching relationship with a client, that idea of helping somebody see more and see before is spending some time with them to understand like, where do you want to go? Like, a lot of people, we hear the word vision and we think like self-help and personal development and all these like hacks to try to like put your vision on paper. And I believe in a lot of that stuff. It's easier said than done, right? And so one of the things I would do is just ask good questions to try to build relationship enough where somebody would tell me like, what do you actually want? Like when you think about yourself 5 years from now, what are you doing professionally? Are you leading? Are you an individual contributor still on the team? Like, do you have desire to lead the team? What kind of projects are you working on? Like, what kind of clients are you working with? What kind of team are you on? And I would try to kind of understand like, where do they want their future to go? And then I would paint the vision for like, here's where we're going. And either those things align or they don't, right? I think sales is really similar, right? Like we were jamming a little bit before we started recording about like sales for Cincy Podcast Studio. And like, I think sales is really similar, like trying to understand where is that organization, that prospective client, where are they trying to go? And here's where we're trying to take clients and do those things align. I think recruiting is no different. What I tried to be really sensitive to is not selling anyone on the opportunity, but instead being really focused on, are we going to be able to move in the same direction? And if we genuinely can say yes to that, to that question, then like let's figure out if all the tactical details align around comp and location and role and all those things. But if we want to move in the same direction, then let's keep the conversation going.
I love that. Okay. I have so many more questions, but I want to fast forward again.
Yeah.
So, we didn't really talk about this, but after your conversation with your mentor, you start to have that first round of layoffs. You realize that eventually you realize, hey, we need to actually shut down 3021.
Yeah.
I can't help but think that there was, in the world of business, it feels like reputation matters. Mm. And I can't help but think that in that moment when you recognize, hey, this needs to be done.
Yeah.
What did you, like, what were the stages of grief for you? Like, what did you feel about, like, were you worried about your reputation? Like, did it feel like, obviously there was probably this feeling of failure that happened in that moment.
Yeah.
But like, what else was going through your head in that moment about who you are, how you were going to continue moving, like that eventually spawned into something I think pretty cool with what you're doing now?
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to like take myself back to those moments. It's interesting. I said this to a friend not all that long ago, maybe a handful of weeks ago. I said, I still don't know if I totally know how to grieve well. And I think that's probably true for a lot of us. Like, you know, unless I in my life, up until the last few years, life had been pretty good. And, you know, part of my story is when I was 16 years old, down in Monterey, God put a verse on my heart. It's still the only tattoo that I have on my body. And that verse was John 16:33. It says, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And it's Jesus's kind of last message to his disciples at the Last Supper before he's ultimately crucified on a cross and then defeats the grave 3 days later. And that phrase, take heart, just hit me when I was 16. You know, I'm around all these experiences of these broken families in Monterey and these children that are in really difficult situations. And then I'm having American groups come down and share their stories, and oftentimes hearing really vulnerable stories of some brokenness going on in their world. And I wasn't experiencing a lot of pain and brokenness at 16 personally, but I was watching a lot of like real life happen to folks around me. And that phrase, take heart, just became something that I latched onto. What I realize now is God was preparing my heart in so many ways for what this last season of my life would look like. He was preparing me to be able to take heart in these moments that were really, really challenging. I've chatted with some folks, you know, that for a season didn't know all of what was going on in my story, that I met during this season that said to me like, dude, I would have had no idea like the weight that you were carrying through this. And I attribute that to God just preparing my heart to be able to wake up every day and say, you've overcome it all. So whatever I'm battling through, you know, trying to pay off $200,000 of debt on the business, trying to navigate, you know, difficult family circumstances, trying to be in my team's corner, trying to unwind client engagements and do right by these clients, even though maybe we weren't able to finish some of these projects, worrying about reputational damage and what I was going to do next professionally. Like there's no other option than to just say, I surrender all of this to you. And my only choice is to take heart, knowing that at the end of the day, all that matters is that I do the best job I possibly can in these circumstances. And I keep showing up. I keep showing up as a dad and a husband first and foremost. And I show up as best I can for my team and for our clients.
So you're in the middle of this, you're winding down, you are recognizing that this is ending.
Yeah.
And you and I had a conversation not long before 3020 was completely dissolved.
Yeah.
Though what do you level up marketing? No, what is your LLC still exists?
Scale up marketing.
Scale up marketing. Yes.
Yeah.
But what when we talked, you were kind of at the genesis of a new idea.
Yeah.
Of kind of like who it felt like you wanted to be next.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where did that come from? And like, what do you see the version of Kurt, version 12 or whatever?
Yeah. Well, what I would say to that is like, you know, we talked about reinvention earlier. I don't necessarily see it as a new version or even a new identity, right? Like I think a lot of these different seasons in my professional career are trying to learn more and more about who God designed me to be, and what he's calling me to next, and more fully step into that.
Yeah.
And what I would say to our team, even when we were growing the agency, is like, hey, eventually my ultimate goal is to, like, my dream would have been to do an internal sale, to grow up some leaders inside of our team, and eventually, you know, remove myself from the day-to-day so much that we could actually sell the business to the team that was really running it. Like that was my dream. If not that, then sell it to, you know, another larger agency that was going to preserve our team and preserve the culture in the way that we were doing things. And so the goal all along was to, at some point, not be operating in the day-to-day of the marketing agency. I used to tell my team all the time, like, I'm not going to spend 30 years as a marketer. Like that's not what I feel called to. What I've always felt called to or admired are my friends that had built coaching and speaking businesses, that spent their days and their time taking lessons learned either from their own personal lives or from people that they had gotten to know and built relationship with or had learned from afar, and help be a thought partner to leaders and teams, and help them navigate difficult or maybe great situations, right? Like I'd always admired that and always felt called to that work. And so you say, you know, that we had realized that 30/21 wasn't going to be a thing anymore. Really, we decided. There was a season there for a few months where the options were, you know, get right back on the horse. Plenty of small businesses lay off some people, and years later go get right back to where they were, right? And build it back up. And so there was an option to do that. There was an option to say, hey, you know what? Like, this business was really fun and really profitable when we had a really small team and kind of hunker down and just run lean for a while. There was an option to do that. And then the third option was pivot and do something else. And in that kind of quest of like, okay, what does something else mean? I realized like my goal all along was to get out of this thing and coach and speak. Like, that's what I wanted. That's the business I've wanted to build all along in the background. And I just had to get really honest with myself to say, I don't think in this season, as a young dad trying to be a great husband and trying to help my family navigate some difficult situations, I don't think that getting right back on the horse is the right call. And that instead, I have some things to give to clients and to some small teams because of the experiences that I had. I want to lean into that. I feel drawn to that. And so just through the process of kind of evaluating those options, I realized, like, have you ever heard the story about the fishing guide down in Mexico?
No, I haven't heard the story.
All right. So there's this like kind of like parable about a fishing guide down in Mexico, and these, you know, high-powered corporate guys are coming down to Mexico to spend some time with them, these entrepreneurs. And they come down and they go out on his boat for a few days, and they have an incredible time. And they end up kind of talking to him about, like, you created a really great experience for us. You're really good at this guide thing. Like, why don't you hire some other guides and like build this thing out and really build it into an enterprise? And he's like, well, then what would I do? They're like, well, you could have like multiple boats and you could have multiple guides. And then like maybe eventually like you wouldn't need to guide anymore. He's like, that sounds interesting. Like, then what would I do? Like, well, you could maybe sell the business for a lot of money if you built it into this thing that had enterprise value. He's like, and then what would I do? He's like, well, then you could just like fish all day. He's like, well, that's what I do now. And I realized through that process, like I thought of that story. I'm like, man, this whole time I was trying to build up this resume and build this business so that I could sell it and go do what I really wanted to do, what was the desire of my heart. But I could also just go do that now. And so that was ultimately the decision that we made, was like, now's the season to run a really simple business and just go pour myself into these other entrepreneurs and teams.
So then here you are today, really getting moving in this. Like I'm interviewing you like a week after you were just speaking at a couple different things. And you're really trying to lean into that coaching space.
Yeah.
Who is the person that you're really trying to help right now?
Yeah. I mean, clients look like a few different profiles of clients of who I'm working with right now. So one is wealth management advisors, guys that own and run their own practices or firms. The second is entrepreneurs, guys that run their own businesses. And the third is sales leaders. And really the reason those three folks, the thing that they have in common is communication and trust are at the core of everything that they do. Whether you are leading clients or you're leading a team or both, being able to communicate efficiently and effectively and in a way that draws out the emotion of what you really want to say, right? Like we've all been in circumstances where we know what we really want to say, and then we start talking and we're like, that didn't actually capture what my heart was in that moment, right? And so I think like helping those folks better align what they actually say and how they say it with what's truly in their head and in their heart. And then second, just being a good strategic guide and thought partner for them as they try to navigate growing and scaling a business, and doing that without losing track of their priorities.
Awesome. Okay. So I want to close out our time, because we're running out of time, with an exercise.
Yeah.
It's going to be a 3-part exercise. So I want you to act as yourself right now.
Yeah.
A business coach style guy who's trying to help other people.
Yeah.
But I want you to coach 3 people.
Okay.
Your 16-year-old self in Monterey.
Ooh, okay.
Your 22-year-old self starting the new business of financial advising.
Yeah.
And 2024 you.
Yeah.
The moment you realize things were not going the way they should.
Yeah.
What do you say to those 3 versions of you?
It's good. I'll start more recent and work my way back. Okay. So 2024 me, I was 34. I would say my biggest, as a coach, so much of my time is spent with people that are either going through a really difficult season in their lives, and they hire a coach because they're trying to navigate some really challenging circumstances, or things are really good and they're trying to make sure that they don't lose their way, and in that process are trying to capitalize on some of those opportunities. And I think, my role as a coach in either of those circumstances oftentimes is to be the guy that just says, hey, take a deep breath. Everything's going to be okay. And that's what I would say to myself at 34 is take a deep breath. Everything's going to be okay. In that moment, I had to remind myself of that so much. Anytime I heard that from a friend or mentor, it meant more than they could ever imagine. And I would say that maybe as an encouragement to anybody listening is, if somebody's going through it right now, pick up the phone and just say, hey, I'm here. Take a deep breath. Everything's going to be okay. You'd be floored by how much that means to somebody that's going through it. So that's the first one. 22-year-old me, a phrase I came across as I was kind of going through the transition from I decided to shut the agency down and I'm stepping into coaching and speaking business, that I think 22-year-old me would have really benefited from hearing is, I have nothing to prove, but I have something to give. When you're 22 years old, and especially when you're leaning into a role like a financial advisor, the phrase "fake it till you make it" comes to mind, right?
Yes.
And we've all been there. We're all there today, right? I find myself slipping back into that, where like I come on a podcast like this or go to a networking event or something like that, and I find myself feeling like I need to present as something bigger or better than I authentically am. And the reality is, all of us have experiences that are unique to our story that someone that hasn't had those same experiences can really benefit from, right? A buddy of mine said when I was walking through all this, hey, your test is your testimony, right? And what I would say to that 22-year-old is like, dude, you've actually lived a lot of life. You have some really unique experiences. There are some things that you can bring to the table that are beautiful without you trying to fake anything that you haven't experienced yet, right? So that's what I would say to the 22-year-old is you have nothing to prove, but you have something to give, and focus on that. 16-year-old me, gosh, I would say lean in even harder to discipleship. When I was, one of my earliest memories is being in Church of Christ in Wilmington, Ohio, where we grew up. And I don't even remember who the person was, but I remember my dad leaning down to me, putting his hand on my shoulder and saying, hey, I'm going to make up a name, Paul. Here's what Paul does. Here's how I know Paul. I want you to walk over to Paul and introduce yourself. And that's like one of my earliest memories, is like kind of a blurry version of that scene. And I think it was my dad's way in that moment of saying, hey, building relationship with other men that you admire is really important. Go learn how to do that. And because of that, when I was 16, 17, and even now today, I have some really incredible mentors in my life that I proactively have pursued relationship with them and have pursued discipleship with them. When I was 16, I was already leaning into that, but I would just say lean in harder. Like that was a unique opportunity for me to have built some of those relationships at that age and have exposure, especially down in Monterey, to some just incredible people that were just dripping with wisdom. I would say just don't take that for granted. Lean in even harder.
I love it. Oh my gosh, dude, this has been an incredible conversation. I like, my brain's spinning thinking about all the things you shared today. This has been so incredibly valuable for me. I hope that people listening have felt the same way, but this is amazing to me.
I just want to say thank you. I love what you guys are doing. I love the podcast. I love the business of helping people tell more of their stories and share themselves and their knowledge with the world. Obviously, like that hits my heart given what I'm passionate about. You guys are doing incredible work. So keep it up. And thank you for the opportunity to come share some of what the last couple of years have been.
Yeah.
One of my favorite pastors on the planet is a guy named Mark Batterson. And he talks about anytime God does something in your life, it can either turn into pride or it can turn into praise. And what I've felt really convicted around in this season is God has done some incredible things to help us navigate what the last couple of years have been. And I have to turn that into praise. I have to turn that into praise and go give credit where credit is due. We wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation if it weren't for his provision.
Amen. I can hear that. How can people reach out to you if they want to talk more with you?
I would say LinkedIn. Right. I hang out on LinkedIn every single day. So type my name in there, come find me, connect with me, shoot me a message. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you again. This has been amazing. Thanks so much for listening to the Cincinnati Business Podcast. If you like the show, the best way to support us is to like, comment, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you fantastic content just like this. And if you are a greater Cincinnati-based business owner who has something you want to share with the world, reach out to me at brian@cincinnatipodcaststudio.com.